What if I told you that no secret finds its place when taken to the grave? What if I told you that there is a legend, a theory memorialized amongst the ancient sages that every thought, action, or confession you believe to have kept to yourself has its home beyond your clutches? What if I told you that for every twisted reality a person thinks is theirs and theirs alone to bear, the wind listens? Maybe the wind does more than that. Maybe the wind absorbs it all. And when the air over a village or a town or a city becomes heavy with the secrets of its inhabitants, the wind begins to move. To rid itself of its heaviness, a cold gust sweeps into the corners of the town and, if it's strong enough, blows across the ends of the earth. The gales of east and west carry the secrets of its people, and the winds intermingle. They flurry, they whisper. What if I told you that there exist those among us who hear words beneath the breath of the wind? What if I told you that whenever it blows, such people are exposed to the secrets of our mothers, our children, and every dark and hidden thing you thought would die in shame, desperation, or sorrow? The wind tells them everything. You see, it relieves you and I of a certain weight to secrecy we don't know, a weight that lurks between the heavens and the earth. The wind burdens them instead, but neither you nor I would ever know, except for the fact that they are quiet. And when the wind blows, the ancient law of those who shiver more than most comes to life within their very breaths. There is something in their eyes, tired and haunted. This is the story of a boy who heard too much, the girl who loved him, and the wind that, if you listen, carries their story between the gentle current and its roar. Micah had never not known a life when secrets didn't clog his ears like cobwebs. For as long as he could remember, the wind had told him things, the things that dispersed as rumors throughout the town, the things said under whispered breaths in the graveyard, the things hushed over the cradle as lullabies only a troubled mother would remember, and her child would be dead into. Indeed, Micah heard words beneath the wind, and for as long as he could remember, he wished he couldn't, because some truths of the village that raised him were better off unrealized. Now, within this quaint, tired village, over a hill and across the lake, there lived a girl who heard not words beneath the wind, nor words above its current. For as long as she could remember, the words of her fellow man had become quieter and quieter, until finally she only saw mouths move and faces crumble in laughter, pain, or sorrow. She knew not whether the sparrow laughed or it screamed. Ophelia had lived in a world of muffled noises, silence, and vibration sustained beneath her skin, until one day she met the boy who heard words beneath the wind. So, some say it was in a classroom, others say it was in a library. I say, however, it was under an ancient willow tree, the oldest of its kind within the village they lived in. For each of their struggles, not one of the other children sought the company of the girl or the boy. The boy, whenever the wind shivered, froze in the middle of a game amongst the village boys, and they mocked him for it. The girl, with certain scrutinous, analyzing eyes, instilled a certain discomfort in the girls who braided charms from the daisies, talked about their dreams, and gossiped about life within the village. To read their lips, she had to watch, and sympathy is a wild, strange thing. And in this quaint, quiet little village, there was too little of it. For when people keep secrets, they imprison themselves, their consciences, and their own awareness to their own heads. They let the wind absorb it all. They let the air become thick and heavy with their sin. And unknowingly, when the wind blows, they torment ones with the gift, ones like Micah with their secrets. And so, one day, the girl and the boy found each other under the ancient willow tree. The girl knew not why the boy was there, and the boy knew not why the girl found herself there either. Micah knew not what it meant to have a friend, and Ophelia knew not even the intonation of such a word, only that in being raised between the forest and the village, that people clustered together for the sake of blood or connection or humor remained a mystery to her. One day, however, underneath the crook of that willow tree, Ophelia pushed a letter against the side of Micah's back. And he didn't face the unfamiliar girl, but he crumpled the letter between his fingers, and on that fateful day, he read it. And I'll tell you what it said. Why do the other village boys dislike you so? Micah, for the first time in his entire life, told someone that indeed he heard whispers beneath the wind. He told her about what the village girls and boys talked about when the sun went down. He told her about what happened to the young woman who visited the old well and was never seen again. He told her about what really happened to old Baker John. He wrote it all down on that crumpled piece of paper. He scrawled every story he could remember between the margins. And he watched her pull apart the letters he etched too suffocated and too thin. And then she stopped reading, because Ophelia realized that it wasn't enough. She realized that there was more, and she realized that it was killing him. So she made him a promise. For even though she would never hear him, even though she would never know, she promised that every day, beneath that willow tree, he wouldn't have to write anything down. He could just speak. She promised that she would listen with her eyes, with her smile, and with her touch when her ears failed her. And he promised that he would make her forget what it meant to be alone. Ophelia and Micah sat beneath the willow tree every day when the sun melted at sunset, and Micah told Ophelia everything the wind told him in the days that passed. Sometimes, when the wind flurried between their conversations, he'd stop speaking. He'd listen, and his face would crumble. He'd hear something dark. He'd hear a secret. And then she'd squeeze his arm and bring him back to her eyes. Most times he'd tell her, and other times he'd be quiet, because part of him feared that maybe, just maybe, a part of her actually heard some part of what he told her. You see, while Micah knew everything about the village, the people in it and its history, the wind had told him so, the wind never told him about Ophelia. He only knew of what she wrote down on little pieces of paper. And that was never enough. Ophelia's past remained a mystery. For as much as Micah was inundated with so much, he also had questions. He wanted to know not from the wind, but from her own voice, who she was. He cared not about the secrets of the village. He only cared about her secrets. He only cared about her loneliness, her pain, and her past. He knew that there were people like him who existed, people with gifts like his, who heard voices beneath the wind. But what if there were others with different gifts? Who was she? What was she? Why did she care so much to listen for the sake of something she'd never really know, for the sake of his own relief? Why did Ophelia care for secrets she could only interpret within his eyes as he told them to her? Well, as the story goes, the girl under the ancient willow tree had secrets of her own. She grew up between the forest and the village, but she also grew up between the cliff and the ocean. She knew not why she was born the way she was. She knew not why everyone experienced a dimension to the world she would never get to know. A dimension of voices and laughter and screams. Ophelia hated that she never knew why the baker's wife and the carpenter's son leveled against each other, only that it split a household of children too innocent to endure their parents' dissatisfaction. She hated that she had to infer from the world through expressions and beatings and closed doors instead of words. Until she met Micah. Until she met someone who heard too much. That she couldn't tell Micah why she ran away from home, why she found herself under the ancient willow tree, why she so despised the voices that raised her, the voices that should have kept her away from the loneliness. This would be the fracture that broke their bond. Life isn't so made of heroes and villains so much as it is people with secrets and those who fail to understand them. She knew that Micah only wanted the best for her. She knew that for as much as she relieved him of his demons by, quite simply, listening, he was starting to find his own voice, his own interactions, his own friends, people who would respond in ways and fill the gaps that she couldn't. And he wanted the same for her too. She could feel him getting better. She could feel him becoming lighter and freer. But she could also feel him pulling away. She knew that him exposing their secret place to her family and the village children wasn't out of unkindness. It was because he didn't know why she ran away in the first place. She knew he only wanted her to find her home again, the way she'd help him find his. He didn't know that there was more than one villain in their story. When he brought the other children and her family to their sacred place under the willow tree, she knew he hadn't meant harm. She knew he hadn't meant to hurt her, but he had. And when he chased after her as she ran further towards the edge of the cliff, he didn't know that the villains were watching. Not her family, no, not the other children, but the wind itself. The wind, you see, is alive, and the wind was jealous. For years, the wind had had Micah to itself. For years, for as much as Ophelia had never known the word friend, the wind had ensured that Micah never knew the word love, until he met Ophelia. And the wind knew that it could weaponize certain connections such that Micah would do anything, everything he could, to bring her back to the village they called home. But Ophelia wasn't ready to go back, and the wind knew that. So, as Ophelia neared the edge of the cliff and Micah chased after her, trying to call her back, as the sight of the other village kids and her family beckoning her towards them as if they had no idea that they'd encroached on their sacred place, all because Micah had brought them here, she had to retreat further and further away, to find somewhere else to hide, somewhere else to escape. As she ran away, enraged at her friend's cluelessness at the betrayal, the wind blew stronger than it usually did, because the wind wanted Micah back. The village would say that Ophelia jumped off the cliff. They would say that the betrayal and hopelessness had led her to her final choice, that it was better to leave them all. But I know the truth. And when I tell you that the wind blew, it blew with ferocity. It blew with jealousy. It blew with rage. It blew because when Micah cried out to Ophelia to stop running, when he screamed that he loved her, the wind knew that she'd heard him louder than anything she'd ever heard. And the wind couldn't let her turn back. It couldn't let her take Micah away. So, the wind blew with a jealousy that ensured Ophelia would never be seen again. But the story doesn't end here, dear listener, because little did they know that in the days they mourned the loss of a child so young, that Ophelia fought. Somewhere in a realm between the sky and the spirit, where gifts and talents are created and souls move, Ophelia raged against the wind. The question is, though, did she win? Well, all I'll say is this. There is a legend of an old wise man who walks the valleys of the east. They say he plants willow trees and he knows the way of the lover, the way of the wise, and the way of the fearful. Some wonder how he can be so content all alone, and others say that the wind speaks to him. Some say that if you look closely, there are two figures shadowed beneath the branches of the weeping willow tree, and he'll tell you that he's not alone. And when you ask him why or how he's so sure, he'll tell you that the wind has a beautiful name. He'll tell you that the wind is strong. He'll tell you that the wind can fight. He'll tell you not to be afraid of the wind, and more importantly, not to be afraid of love. He'll tell you that he no longer shivers when the wind beckons him, and when love beckons you, neither should you. He'll tell you that it all began once upon a time, when as he grieved what he thought he'd lost under the edge of a cliff, the wind whispered, and it told him that it loved him too. Hi, we hope you enjoyed that story. If you would like to continue supporting us and our authors here at Morningtime Stories Studios, consider subscribing. For inquiries and partnerships, feel free to contact us using the contact information provided below. All that being said, we genuinely hope to see you for our next episode. Goodbye, and stay safe.